The mansion of Chief Williams was quiet to quiet, not the peaceful kind of quiet, but the kind that presses on your chest like a secret. The only sound was the slow ticking of a gold-plated wall clock in the study, marking time in a house that had forgotten how to care. Chief Williams, once called the Lion of Lagos, sat alone by the wide window, staring at a family portrait framed in gold. In the photo, he looked 10 years younger, still upright, still powerful. Agatha, his elegant wife, stood beside him. Frank, David, Cynthia, and Rosal Smiles, all perfectly posed, formed a half-moon around their father, but none of that warmth remained. The old man sighed, his voice a brittle whisper. Who among them would love me if I had nothing? He turned the photo face down on the table and pressed the button beside his chair. Within moments, Mr. John, his longtime lawyer, entered the study, straight-backed, always dressed in grey, and never without his briefcase. "You called for me, Chief?" he asked, taking a seat. "Yes," Chief Williams said, his eyes not leaving the window. "I want to pretend I'm dying." Mr. John blinked. "I beg your pardon, sir. I want to fake a terminal illness. Something bad, something final." The lawyer sat up straight. "Sir, that's a bold move. I need to know who's with me for love," the chief said quietly, "and who is simply waiting for my will to be read." There was a pause. Then the lawyer nodded slowly. "If that's your decision, I'll help. But first, hide a portion of your assets. We'll open a shadow account. Move half of your wealth quietly." Chief Williams allowed himself a small smile. "I knew you'd understand." 2 hours later, Dr. Maxwell, his personal physician, was summoned. After hearing the plan, the doctor leaned back in his chair, his face unreadable. "You want me to lie to your entire family?" he asked. "I want you to help me reveal the truth." The doctor looked at Mr. John, then back at Chief Williams. He finally exhaled and nodded. "I'll fabricate a diagnosis. Something untreatable. Cancer, perhaps. 6 months to live." "It's enough," Chief Williams replied. The trap was set. By the next morning, the transformation began. Chief Williams started coughing, a deep, slow rasp that echoed down the marble halls. He stopped attending meetings, skipped meals, sat in silence, his eyes sunken, his voice weak. The first to notice was Rose. "Daddy, are you okay?" she asked, gently touching his hand as he lay in bed. He gave her a feeble smile. "Just tired, my dear." Within hours, the rest of the family gathered. Agatha stood at the door with arms folded. Frank scrolled on his phone. David looked distracted. Cynthia checked her makeup in the hallway mirror. Rose insisted, "We need to call Dr. Maxwell now." That evening, the family was seated in the ornate living room when Dr. Maxwell arrived, carrying a leather case and a somber face. He examined Chief Williams slowly, carefully, deliberately, then turned to the family and delivered the performance of a lifetime. "It's cancer," he said, voice heavy, aggressive. 6 months at most." Silence crashed over the room like a wave. Cynthia gasped. "What?" Rose burst into tears. "No, Daddy, please." Even Frank and David froze, stunned. Agatha sat slowly on the velvet armchair, hands shaking. For the next few days, everyone played their part. They brought soup, sat beside the chief's bed, offered soft prayers, but Chief Williams kept watching and waiting. By the second week, the masks began to slip. Agatha stopped coming to the bedroom altogether. "I can't bear to see him like this," she told Rose. "It's too painful." Frank grew bolder, now walking into the chief's study with papers in hand. "You should rest, Father," he said. "Let me manage the company now." Chief Williams gave a soft nod but said nothing. David said he had urgent business abroad. Cynthia started skipping meals with the family, claiming errands. She returned with luxury bags and new wigs. Only Rose remained unchanged. She brought her father food, cleaned his room, and sang softly when he couldn't sleep. She even lay beside his bed on the floor, whispering, "I'll never leave you, Daddy. Never." One night, she entered Agatha's room, tears in her eyes. "Mom, let's take him abroad. Maybe there's still hope." Agatha didn't even look up from her mirror. "Too expensive. What if he dies there? Waste of money." Rose walked out silently, heartbroken. That same night, Chief Williams whispered to himself in the dark, "So this is how it ends." Downstairs, Frank threw a private party in the guest lounge. Loud music, laughter, champagne. Upstairs, the old man listened with a broken heart. He clutched the edge of the blanket as if it might hold him together. "Thank you," Rose, he whispered. Only you. More days passed. David returned briefly, but fought with Frank over company expenses. Rose stepped in, begging them to stop. Can't you see what this is doing to him? They didn't listen. Cynthia demanded land titles. Agatha complained about the smell of the room, and eventually ordered the chief to be moved to a guest bedroom. This place stinks of death, she spat. Even the staff looked away in shame as guards lifted Chief Williams from his bed, ignoring Rose's protests. That night, the old man lay in a foreign room in his own house, not from illness but heartbreak. In the company, things fell apart. Frank's spending bled the accounts dry. Clients walked away. Employees were fired for disagreeing. The luxury fashion brand he launched was a disaster. Desperate, David began selling company assets, first a hotel, then a piece of land. But Mr. John secretly intercepted the deals, buying them under aliases to protect the chief's legacy. No one knew. Rose found herself trying to hold the house together, but the family kept spiraling. When she caught Agatha in the arms of the new driver, Ben, the final thread snapped. You abandoned him, Rose shouted. Your own husband. Agatha, flushed with shame, tried to silence her. Don't you dare tell your brothers. But it was too late. Something had broken inside Rose. The next morning, she made a decision. She would take her father back to where he was loved. The village, the place where his name still meant something. Where no one asked for titles or money, only whether you'd eaten that day. She packed quietly, and before evening fell, the gates of the mansion opened, and the car slipped into the horizon. The morning after their quiet departure, the dusty village road unrolled before Rose like a fresh chapter. She held the wheel of the black SUV steady, stealing glances at her father in the back seat. He rested with eyes closed, his breathing slow but steady. There was no more coughing, not today, just silence. She didn't know that he wasn't asleep. He was thinking, listening, watching. As the car left the city skyline behind, Chief Williams whispered to himself, let them reveal who they really are, now that they think I'm gone. Back in the mansion, the silence that followed their disappearance lasted barely a day. Then the masks dropped. Frank was the first to capitalize. He summoned an emergency meeting at the company headquarters and strode into the boardroom with the confidence of a man who believed the crown was already on his head. My father won't be returning, he announced without hesitation. As of today, I will act as interim CEO. A few of the older executives exchanged glances. Mr. Dio, who had been with Chief Williams for 28 years, stood up. Shouldn't we at least wait for formal instruction, sir? A letter, a directive. Frank didn't even blink. You're questioning me, in my father's company. He turned to the HR manager. Fire him, and anyone else who disagrees. Just like that, the company began to rot from within. With Chief Williams out of the way, Frank's ambitions went into overdrive. He redesigned the office, installed a personal lounge with velvet armchairs, began hiring his party friends as strategic consultants, and used company funds to host champagne networking events. He showed up to work in flashy sports cars, conducted meetings half drunk, and invested in a luxury fashion brand. No one asked for perfumes, bags, suits, big names, he bragged. We're taking over the lifestyle sector. Meanwhile, the company's balance sheets bled red. Vendors called for payments, clients pulled out, salaries were delayed, but Frank didn't care. He was living like the king he always thought he'd be. David, meanwhile, had no interest in business. I was never meant to sit in boardrooms, he told Cynthia, swirling whiskey in a glass the morning after their father's departure. What are you meant for then? She asked, without looking up from her phone. He smirked. Passports, parties, pretty women. And that's exactly where he went straight. Into indulgence, trips to Dubai, club appearances, wild weekends with influencers and models, and always spending from the family's corporate accounts. He called it networking. Frank called it annoying. Their fights escalated quickly. In one heated moment, David barged into Frank's office. You're killing the company. Frank leaned back, smirking. Relax, little brother. Dad's almost dead. I'm thinking long term. You think this is what he built for us? You sacked people who were with him from the beginning. You turned his legacy into a circus. Frank stood. You think you're smarter because you studied abroad. Newsflash, you're broke, and I'm the boss. David punched him in the jaw. Security had to separate them. Cynthia had no interest in the drama. Her concern was inheritance. What do I get? She asked Agatha. One afternoon, while inspecting her manicure, Agatha poured herself wine. "You're the first daughter. You'll get land, maybe one of the small hotels. Then let's sell one now," Cynthia said, before Frank or David waste it all. But Agatha waved her off. "Not yet, wait for the will." Cynthia rolled her eyes. "If there even is one." At first, Agatha pretended to be grieving. She wore black lace, took calls in hushed tones, walked around with teacups and whispered, "Pray for him," to the maids. But her loneliness didn't last long. At her favorite luxury spa, she met Ben, a young, toned gym instructor with smooth words and a jawline sculpted by vanity. The first conversation was innocent. The second, too friendly. By the third, she was asking for private sessions. "Your skin is too soft to waste in morning," Ben told her, massaging her shoulders. She laughed like a teenager and said, "You're dangerous." That night, they met in a hotel. Within days, Ben was her personal driver. Agatha introduced him to the staff at the mansion with a proud smirk. "He'll take care of me from now on," she said. Rose wasn't there to witness it, but the staff exchanged glances. They all knew in the village, things were different. Rose had settled Chief Williams into a modest guest room in the family's old village home. Every morning she cooked fresh yam porridge, and every evening she told him stories from her childhood, trying to draw a smile from his tired face. The villagers came in droves. "Chief, you are welcome." They brought cola nuts, palm wine, roasted plantains. One old man wiped his eyes. "You paid for my daughter's school fees," he said. "You are not dying. God forbid." They prayed, sang. Some offered herbal remedies. One afternoon, an elderly woman whispered to Rose, "Call the herbalist, the strong one. His medicine works when even the city doctors fail." Rose hesitated, but Chief Williams said softly, "Let him come." The herbalist, when he arrived, he entered the room slowly, tall, with skin dark as midnight, and a satchel of roots and bones. He looked at Chief Williams for a long moment, then said in a low voice, "You are not sick." The chief didn't react. "I can see it in your eyes," the man continued. "Your spirit is not weak, it is watchful." Chief Williams turned his head slightly. It was all a test. The herbalist nodded slowly. "To see who loves you." The old man closed his eyes. "Yes," he then added, "only one stayed. Your daughter." "Yes, Rose." The herbalist sat beside him and placed a warm hand on the chief's chest. "Then the sickness you carry is not in the body, it is in the heart." Chief Williams nodded, a single tear slipping from his eye. Back in the city, the storm grew. David sold one of the family's largest hotels and an untouched plot of land. Mr. John found out in time, bought both back through proxies, locked the deeds away in a private safe. He visited the mansion quietly and sat in the chief's study. Now empty. "They're tearing everything apart," he muttered aloud, not realizing no one was listening. Upstairs, Rose's old room was now a closet for Cynthia's designer clothes. Frank walked around like a king. Agatha was missing most nights. No one asked about Chief Williams anymore. One night the silence cracked. Cynthia stormed into the living room. "David, you sold the Sunray Grand Hotel. Are you out of your mind?" It was sitting there. David shot back, "I needed funds. That was meant for me. You want everything. Cynthia, do something for once." Their shouting turned violent. Slaps were exchanged. Vases broke. A maid ran to Frank. "They're fighting." Frank entered, already furious. "You two are idiots. I'm the one running the company." Rose would have stopped them, but she wasn't there. There was no one left to stop the madness. In the village, things were quiet. One night, under a mango tree, Chief Williams whispered to Rose, "There's something I must tell you." She held his hand. "What is it?" He took a deep breath. "I was never sick." Rose froze. "What?" "I pretended. To see who truly loved me." Rose sat back, stunned. "Daddy, ... Why?" "I had to know," he said. "I had to see for myself." He said nothing for a long time. Then she asked, "And now that you know?" He looked at her, eyes soft. "I want to go home." The village air was thick with the scent of firewood and rain-soaked earth. It wasn't grand like the mansion. No chandeliers, no imported tiles. But there was peace, raw and quiet. It lived in the breeze that rustled banana leaves, in the rooster calls at dawn, in the soft hum of evening songs rising from distant huts. Chief Williams sat under a tree in the courtyard, wrapped in a faded blanket. For the first time in weeks, he wasn't pretending. He didn't need to. There, among chickens, and barefoot children. He was simply Wills again. Rose watched from the window as villagers gathered, elders, women with baskets, young men in worn shirts. They came not with pity, but with affection. "You gave my husband a job when no one else would," one woman said, pressing a bag of fresh corn into Rose's hands. "You paid for my surgery," said another, handing her a carved wooden stool for the chief. A tall man approached with quiet reverence. "He helped build our school. We won't let him suffer alone." Rose's heart clenched. Back in the city, her father's name had become an asset, something to inherit, to trade, to fight over. But here, it was sacred. That afternoon, the herbalist returned. Chief Williams lay on a thin mattress, looking older but calmer. The herbalist sat beside him without a word and unpacked his bag of roots, placing them carefully beside a small calabash of herbal paste. Rose stepped back to give them space. After a long silence, Chief Williams spoke. "I never had cancer." The herbalist did not react. "I lied to my family, told them I was dying. I wanted to know who truly cared for me when I had nothing to offer." The herbalist nodded slowly. "And now you know." "Yes," the old man replied, voice low. Dewey looked toward the doorway, where Rose stood, watching him with quiet worry. "She is the only one who stayed." Later that evening, after the herbalist had gone, Chief Williams and Rose sat on the veranda, sharing roasted plantains. A warm silence hung between them. Then Rose broke it. "I was angry when you told me," she said. "At first, I know. But now, I understand." He turned to look at her. Her face carried sadness, but also strength. "I didn't want to believe they could be so cold," she said. "Mum, my brothers, Cynthia, but they showed their hearts." "I didn't want to believe it either," he said softly. She reached for his hand. "So what now?" Chief Williams looked out toward the trees. "I go back. To do what?" "To reclaim my name." Word spread fast. Chief was recovering. More visitors came, bearing gifts and prayers. Musicians offered to play. The village council asked for a private audience. "You are a man of honor," one elder said. "We never believed you would fall quietly." Another added, "Your daughter is a blessing. She walks with your heart." Rose blushed. Chief Williams smiled, but his mind was elsewhere, already building the next step. That night, he called for Mr. John. The drive back to the city was long. This time, Chief Williams sat upright in the passenger seat. He wore a clean white agbada, simple but dignified. His beard had been trimmed, his eyes clear. Rose drove in silence, hands steady on the wheel. "You don't have to do this today," she said. "You could wait a little longer." He didn't respond, but she saw the fire returning to his expression. This was no longer a sick man, this was a storm. When the mansion gates opened, the guards nearly dropped their walkie-talkies. "Chief," one of them stammered, rushing forward. Chief Williams gave a small nod. "Good afternoon." They watched as he stepped out of the car, strong and steady. Inside the house, Cynthia was in the living room, flipping through a fashion catalogue. David was pacing the hallway on another loud phone call. Frank was in the study, shouting at someone over poor sales numbers. Agatha was nowhere to be found. Rose walked beside her father as he entered. The house went still. David dropped his phone. Cynthia gasped. Frank walked into the living room and froze. Nobody spoke. Then Chief Williams simply said, "Good afternoon." Reunion was not warm. Agatha appeared only after hearing the noise. She wore a silk robe and heavy perfume. When she saw him, she stumbled backward into the wall. "Darling, but the doctor said." "I know what the doctor said," he interrupted coldly. Rose stood beside him like a quiet flame, refusing to move. Frank finally found his voice. You're better." "Alive," Chief Williams said, disappointed. "But alive." No one dared ask the next question, but he answered it anyway. "There was never cancer." They all stared. What?" David muttered. "You heard me. I was never sick." "But the diagnosis fake, arranged to reveal the truth." The silence was loud. "You lied to us," Cynthia snapped. "No, I gave you a mirror," Chief replied. "You just didn't like what you saw." He turned to Agatha. "I left for less than a month, and you brought a lover into my home. While I lay pretending to die upstairs, you were in the guest quarters with a boy half your age." Agatha said nothing. Her face turned to stone. He turned to Frank. "You sacked my team. You threw parties. You wasted what took me 40 years to build." Frank opened his mouth to speak but couldn't. "David," the chief continued, "you sold my hotel. My land, you never asked, never hesitated. David looked down in shame. Cynthia tried to step in. At least, I didn't sell anything. But you tried, Chief Williams snapped. You just didn't have the paperwork. Finally, he turned. 2 rows. And you fed me, bathed me, defended me, took me home. When everyone else saw a dying man, you saw your father. His voice broke slightly. You saw me. The room was still. Then Chief Williams turned to Mr. John, who had quietly entered with a folder in hand. Prepare everything. I want new documents, a new will, a full transfer. Mr. John nodded. It's already in motion. Frank looked up sharply. What do you mean, transfer? Chief Williams didn't flinch. Everything goes to Rose, the company, the houses, the estates, everything that's left. Cynthia gasped. David looked like he might faint. Agatha stepped back, hitting the table behind her. Chief Williams continued. You had your chance. You failed the test. He stepped forward slowly, voice low. I'm not dying, but the man who trusted you is gone. By morning, the mansion felt like a funeral home, except no one had died, at least not physically. Chief Williams sat in his master bedroom, freshly bathed, dressed in crisp traditional white, sipping hot cocoa with an ease that mocked the chaos below. Outside the room, the family floated like ghosts. Agatha hadn't said a word since his return. Cynthia hadn't touched her phone. Frank was locked in the study, trying to find a financial loophole, and David was simply gone, but none of it mattered anymore. The lion was back and he was done watching. In the late morning, Chief Williams summoned Mr. John once again. The lawyer came carrying a brown leather folder and a thick envelope. They sat across from each other, no words needed. Chief opened a drawer in his desk, pulled out something small, black and metallic. Mr. John raised an eyebrow. Is that a camera? Chief Williams said. He opened a hidden panel beneath the drawer and removed 2 more. Every word, every betrayal, every whisper, recorded. He clicked the device, and a screen blinked to life. There was Agatha, scoffing in the hallway. I can't breathe in this room. It smells like death. Frank at the bar. Soon everything will be mine. David on a phone call. Just sell it. Dad's not getting up again. Cynthia, laughing as she tried on new jewelry. Agatha egging in Ben's lap, her voice breathy with laughter. Mr. John didn't blink. They showed their hearts. Chief Williams exhaled. And now I'll show them mine. That afternoon, the family gathered. Reluctantly, Cynthia sat stiffly on the velvet couch, glancing around like she expected cameras. David, freshly returned and wearing sunglasses indoors, leaned against the wall. Frank entered last, jaw tight, phone in hand, still trying to mask fear as confidence. Agatha stayed near the back, arms folded, wearing a scarf that tried to mimic humility but failed. Then Chief Williams entered. The room shifted. He walked slowly, but deliberately, each step louder than the silence around him. Mr. John followed close behind, carrying the folder that would change everything. Chief Williams didn't sit. He stood in the center like a judge delivering a verdict. You all know the truth now, he said. I was never sick. No one interrupted. He paced slowly, letting the tension stretch. I watched, I listened, and I learned exactly who you are when you think no one's watching. He turned to Frank first. You were first in line, hungry. You kicked out the people who helped build this company from nothing. You spent like a king, but led like a child. You mocked your own father's name in the presence of strangers. And worst, you betrayed the trust I spent a lifetime building. Frank opened his mouth. Chief raised a hand. Don't speak, you're out. You're no longer an heir. No longer welcome in my company. And by tomorrow, you will be removed from the executive board, permanently. Frank's voice cracked. Dad, please, you earned this, Chief said, firm. Use the money you stole to start over if you know how. Then, to David, you know better. Selling my hotel like a roadside item, wasting the money on parties and women. David's lips trembled. I thought you were gone. You thought wrong. Chief stepped closer. That hotel, that land, they were meant for you. Not anymore. Mr. John bought them back before they were lost completely. But you've lost your inheritance. You're done. David sank into a chair, head in hands. I'm sorry, Dad. Please. But Chief Williams had already turned away. He faced Cynthia. You didn't sell anything. Not because you wouldn't, but because you couldn't. Cynthia straightened. That's not fair. It's the only fair thing in this room, he snapped. But You wanted to sell land before I was even buried, he said. You screamed at your brother because you thought the hotel belonged to you. Cynthia blinked, speechless. Chief's voice softened, just a little. But I'll give you one last chance. You want something from me? Earn it. Prove it. Not with words. With actions. She nodded quickly. I will. We'll see, he said, turning away. Then, finally, his eyes landed on Agatha. There was no pity in them. You were my wife, he said, voice steady. My partner, my friend. Agatha opened her mouth. He didn't let her speak. And yet, while I pretended to die, you brought a stranger into our home. You gave him a room. You gave him your body. And you gave me nothing, not even a goodbye. Tears ran silently down her cheeks. You have 24 hours to leave this house, Chief Williams said. You are no longer my wife in deed or heart, and I no longer owe you comfort. She fell to her knees. Please, Wills, please forgive me. He turned to Mr. John. Call security. Have her removed with dignity, but make sure it's final. Then he faced the room. Only Rose remained standing. Silent and strong, Chief Williams walked toward her and took her hand. This, he said, turning back to them, is my daughter. She is the only one who cared for me without wanting anything back. The only one who carried me, bathed me, fed me like a child when the rest of you were throwing parties and plotting sales. He turned to Mr. John once more. Effective immediately. Transfer all my assets to Rose. The company, the shares, the estates. She is the sole heir. The air was sucked out of the room. Cynthia gasped. Frank slumped into the couch. David shook, his head in disbelief. Agatha sobbed quietly as the guards gently escorted her away. Chief Williams raised his voice once more. Rose is the new CEO. Bring back every employee Frank fired. Rebuild the legacy I almost lost, and let the world know still has value. Rose's eyes shimmered. Thank you, Daddy, she whispered. He smiled, tired but proud. You've earned everything. Now lead with grace. If you watched until the end, comment the word loyalty, subscribe to the channel, and share this video with your friends and family.